gypsy girl was in the water, we looked at the map of Denmark to decide where to go in the month we had scheduled for Danish waters. There are unlimited sailing opportunities in and among the many islands of Denmark. We finally decided that for Gypsy Girl's maiden voyage, we would sail up the Roskilde Fjord and then continue on around the northern end of the island of Zealand, down through the straits between Sweden and Denmark, and on to Copenhagen. The father of the boatyard worker that does most of the finish work on the Great Dane 28s, Herr Nielsen, waves goodbye as Gypsy Girl departs Roskilde, headed for Copenhagen on her shakedown cruise. We take our final look at the now familiar site of this picturesque church overlooking the Roskilde Fjord, where the Vikings assembled for their raids on England and the coast of Europe. We are on our way to Copenhagen. Gypsy Girl opens her first bridge. The N flag is the signal, and it works. We will open several hundred more bridges and locks before we arrive at our destination, Corpus Christi, Texas. The bridge slowly closes as we depart.
Our first night out is spent in the shadow of a monstrous pile of scrap iron. Many slips are available in the local yacht club, and they invite us to be their guests for the night. The next day, we discover why there are so many slips available. Roskilde Fjord has pastures and woods sloping gently down to the fjord. Beyond are low rolling hills and small villages of rural Denmark. We are all alone as we sail slowly up the fjord.
We leave Frederiksværk early the next morning, and again we are nearly all alone. Until suddenly, we see hundreds of sailboats charging towards us. We are near the shore, but many of the boats pass inside of us, and we are in the middle of a fleet of racers going in the opposite direction. We just settled down to a cup of coffee after the first fleet charges by, when another fleet appears and charges past us. After this fleet gets by, we settle down again, and a third fleet charged past us. A fourth and fifth wave passed by us. We later learned that we have sailed through the annual Zealand Runt race, and there were over 1,200 boats in it. We finally arrived at the starting line for this race in time to see the sixth and final group cross the starting line. This race is over 100 miles long and is around the island of Zealand, where Copenhagen is located.
The next morning, we leave from Helsingør Harbor and are soon passing the Kronborg Castle, the setting of Shakespeare's Hamlet. A pretty sight. Ferries to and from Sweden cross this narrow strait at frequent intervals and require a sharp lookout.
Danish friends, the Mikkelsons, join us for the trip from Helsingør to Vedbæk, and their young son Klaus helps Eleanor steer. Now Klaus shows his mother how it is done. Kirsten seems to be getting the idea. Finally, it's his father's turn to take a lesson from Klaus. He has a good grip on things.
The beach at Vedbæk is a favorite for the local children, and they make the most of a beautiful summer day. The hydrofoil from Sweden passes us as we enter the Copenhagen pleasure boat harbor of Langlinje. The Hofruen, or Little Mermaid, is one of Copenhagen's most publicized tourist attractions. This fountain depicts the goddess Gefjon, to whom the King of Sweden offered all the land she could plow off his country in one day. She promptly turned her 4 sons into oxen and, driving them mercilessly, plowed away the island of Zealand.
The harbor was within easy walking distance of Mr. Bass's office, and the day before our departure, he came to say goodbye. We thank him for all the personal attention we had received. Langlinje is open to the rest of the harbor, and passing boats keep it rolly all day and occasionally at night, so we decide to move to a quieter harbor. We again pass the Sweden to Denmark hydrofoil as we leave. The harbor of Svanemøllen is much quieter. These powerhouse stacks make a good landmark when you're returning to this harbor. One of the challenges of cruising is to find adequate bath and toilet facilities. This morning, the yacht club toilets were locked, and a kilo of green gauge plums eaten the night before are demanding prompt attention. I didn't quite make it. This is a message to the attendant who forgot to unlock the toilets.
We are still within a short distance of the Royal Palace in downtown Copenhagen, so we go down to see the changing of the guard. This always draws a crowd.
Herr Monk, Klaus Bass's sales manager, also comes by to be sure everything is satisfactory before we leave. Major Holbear also says goodbye. From Copenhagen, we go up through the straits between Denmark and Sweden, across the Sound, and to the little town of Abeltoft.
I practice taking bearings with the Ritchie electronic hand-bearing compass as we pass Kronborg Castle again. The 1864 frigate Jylland greets us in our next harbor of Abeltoft. This harbor was very crowded, and we had to tie up 5 boats out from the dock. This little village is preserved as it was hundreds of years ago.
From Abeltoft, we make the short hop down to Aarhus. One of the reasons that all Danish harbors are so crowded in the summer is because of the tremendous number of German boats that choose Denmark for their summer cruise. This open boat was sailed from Germany to the northern part of the Danish mainland and is now on its way back to Germany.
This beautiful vine-covered church was visible from our next harbor at Aarhus. This is one way to keep a child occupied and out of trouble in a busy harbor.
Cruising in foreign harbors usually means that electricity is not available at dockside. We have 2 high-capacity Boris marine batteries installed. One battery is used only for engine starting because of our diesel is extremely difficult to hand crank. Traditional Danish fishing boats are quite often converted into pleasure craft. Some are left almost untouched on the outside and only remodeled on the inside. Others, like this one, are given a new enlarged deck house and rigged as yawls, ketches, or sloops. Eleanor seems to have a lot of men friends to say goodbye to. Here she is saying goodbye to Primus Preben, a Dane that taught us much about sailboats and cruising on a previous trip to Denmark. From Aarhus, we go south down through the narrow, into the narrow fjord of Vejle.
We were invited to visit the mother of one of our Danish friends. She lived on the little island of Yarnu. She was picking berries when we arrived, and the dirt looked so rich that we asked for some to grow flowers in on our ocean crossing. Her house was several hundred years old, but it was spotless inside and out. Until very recently, no cars were allowed on Yarnu, and people came down to meet the ferry by tractor or bicycle. It is still a quaint little island, and we had a most memorable day. A cargo ship leaves Vejle Fjord as we are returning from the island to the harbor where Gypsy Girl is moored. The little harbor of Snaptoon is crowded and bustling with activity as the little ferry returns from Yarnu.
From Snaptoon, we sail down through the very narrow straits at Little Belt, or Lille Belt, as it is called in Danish, to the harbor of Assens. Here we are approaching the Lille Belt Bro, or Little Belt Bridge, that connects one of the larger Danish islands with the mainland of Denmark. One type of navigational aid in Denmark is called a brush and may be a single, double, or triple. They show up quite good in clear weather. Here you see a receding single brush. Now we are just passing a triple brush. And here you can see how it looks as it recedes into the distance.
Swans and geese are common sights in Danish harbors, and I'm always ready with a handout. In some harbors, they have learned to peck on the hull to get your attention. An interesting sound at 5 a.m. A converted fishing boat. And another one.
A dinghy rounds a battered double brush as we enter Athens Harbor. One of the unpleasant tasks of sailing in these crowded waters is finding a place to tie up. In the next few scenes, you will see the boats that entered Athens Harbor in the hour after we did, looking for a place to tie up. It's an interesting mixture between the converted fishing boats, open sailboats, and modern fiberglass cruisers. This big fella decides the harbor is too crowded and drops anchor outside. It is sometimes handy to have some kind of a dinghy ready to use, even in a harbor. A final boat arrives just before sunset, and the harbor starts to quieten down. All slips are filled, and as you can see, the German flag, black, red, and yellow bars, is flying from most of the boats. This is a real problem for the Danes because the harbors are built with their tax money for their use, and the Danes are being crowded out.
This is a usual Danish harbor slip arrangement with a finger pier and a row of pilings on each side for stern lines.
From Athens, we sail to our final Danish harbor on the little island of Ærøskøbing.
we see a real fishing boat. The waters around Denmark are not very productive, but there are still many of these little one-man fishing boats at work.
Many of the sailboats carry an International Optimus class dinghy as a tender, and the children practice in the harbor while dinner is being prepared. The local harbor master collects a small fee. They usually find you even if you're tied 10 out from the dock and you arrived at 2 a.m.
Aeroscubing is deliberately kept just as it was hundreds of years ago, with tile roofs and exposed beams and posts. The music was by Elaine Gerardine.